On this Sunday night, another pivotal meeting over the war in Ukraine. The presidents of the U.S. and Ukraine face to face as a peace deal with Russia seems close.
There will be a security agreement. It'll be a strong agreement.
Plus, from a sex symbol of cinema to staunch activist, the legacy and controversies of French actor Brigitte Bardot. And from Trudeau's resignation to bombshell party defections, a look back at the year that was in Canadian politics and what's ahead.
Global National, reporting tonight, Ann Gaviola.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. It is another meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy as peace in Ukraine hangs in the balance. The two leaders met at Trump's Mar-a-Lago mansion in Florida today, hoping they could soon close the gap on a U.S. proposal to end Russia's invasion. But questions linger over what the Kremlin has in mind. Candice Cole has our top story tonight.
Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida to continue talks to end Russia's war with Ukraine that's dragged on for nearly 4 years.
We have a great achievements, 20-point peace plan, 90% agreed, and U.S.-Ukraine security guarantees, 100% agreed.
We're doing very well. We could be very close. There are one or two very thorny issues.
Zelenskyy praised both Ukrainian and American negotiating teams' work on territorial concessions. Zelenskyy said,
"You know our position, so it's, we have to respect our law and our people. We respect the territory which we control."
Ukraine's constitution forbids any land concessions without a national referendum. Just hours before their meeting, Trump said he'd had a, quote, good and very productive telephone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to the Kremlin, that call, lasting an hour and 15 minutes, revealed Trump and Putin do not support a temporary ceasefire backed by Ukraine and the European Union ahead of preparing a possible referendum to cede territory in the Donbas region, which is primarily under Russian control. Trump told reporters he thinks the U.S. and Ukrainian teams will be able to work quickly to bring about peace.
We've made a lot of progress today, but really we've made it over the last month. This is not a one-day process deal. This is very complicated stuff.
As those peace talks persist, Russia continues to bombard Ukraine relentlessly with airstrikes, targeting residential buildings. Zelensky's meeting with Trump comes just a day after his visit with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who vowed more support for Ukraine. Trump says he plans to speak with Putin again after his meeting with Zelenskyy. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
Here in Canada, a massive winter storm is sweeping across Ontario and into Quebec. Storm warnings have been issued for large parts of both provinces. Freezing rain is the biggest threat, and Toronto is already being hit with 15 to 20 millimeters expected closer to Ottawa and into Quebec. Elizabeth Sokalis is in Montreal with more.
An orange weather warning has been issued for what meteorologists are calling a high-impact freezing rain effect. Beginning overnight into Monday afternoon, most of southwestern Quebec and eastern Ontario are expected to be impacted. Environment Canada says travel conditions could be hazardous, especially during the Monday morning commute.
Tomorrow afternoon, precipitation will change into snow, and then and the winds will pick up, okay? And we'll have gusts maybe up to 80 kilometers an hour.
In addition to heavy winds, between 10 and 15 millimeters of freezing rain could accumulate in and around the city.
Just the weight of the ice could break branches for them. But when the winds pick up in the afternoon and evening, that's when we might see a peak in the power outages as well.
In Montreal and the South Shore, temperatures could rise above zero by mid-afternoon, but with heavy winds and freezing rain turning to snow, the evening rush hour could also be heavily affected. Once the freezing rain and snow is gone, cold weather is expected to stick around for the week into the new year.
There's an Arctic air mass that's coming in, and so from the middle of this week until the next weekend, we'll be in the cold.
Commuters are asked to stay off the roads unless necessary, while travelers heading to the airport should be checking for flight cancellations or delays. Meanwhile, the city of Montreal is in the middle of its snow removal operation, so on top of icy roads, there could be parking restrictions. Elizabeth Ogalis, Global News, Montreal.
French actress and animal rights activist Brigitte Bardot has died at the age of 91. She rocketed to international stardom in the 1950s for her role in And God Created Woman and quickly became a symbol of French sexuality and femininity. Bardot was also a polarizing figure. She was criticized for her far-right views and fined repeatedly for inciting racial hatred. Redmond Shannon looks back on Bardot's life.
She was a film star whose looks and fame transcended language. The term sex kitten was coined for Brigitte Bardot.
The young French star is also quite easy on the eye.
A rebellious image that belied her conservative upbringing in affluent Paris. But by the age of 15, she was already on the cover of Elle magazine. And by her early 20s, she was a superstar, fully aware of her power.
We are here for Brigitte Bardot.
Bardot was the inspiration for Serge Gainsbourg's most famous song and the first real-life model for Marianne, the symbol of France. But even at the height of her movie career, animal welfare was a passion.
J'ai été informée de ce qui se passait au Canada.
She campaigned against seal hunting in Canada, eventually visiting a Newfoundland ice floe to be pictured holding a dead baby seal. When she quit acting aged 39, she said, "I gave my beauty and youth to men, but I will now work for animals." Other causes included farm animal transportation, stray dogs and dolphins. For many, her image was tarnished after she made homophobic and racist slurs. Bardot was fined 6 times for inciting racial hatred, including her assertion that Islam was, quote, destroying France. Bardot lived an equally tempestuous personal life. Married 4 times, she was estranged from her only son for many years and struggled with depression.
She was a dancer.
In a documentary about her life released earlier this month, Bardot said she doesn't care if she is remembered, only that people remember to respect animals. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Harsh winter weather is taking a toll on displaced Palestinians in Gaza. Fierce rain filled camps with ankle-deep puddles over the weekend, leaving many Gazans struggling with water flooding their tents as they tried to survive cold temperatures. Emergency workers have also warned people not to stay in war-damaged buildings because they could collapse from the severe weather. Voters in Myanmar are going to the polls today for the country's first general election in 5 years. But the vote is being held under military rule, and critics argue it's a facade to legitimize military control under the guise of civilian rule. Mackenzie Gray explains.
The lines were reasonably long for the first elections in Myanmar since 2020. Those who cast a ballot having their pinky dipped in ink to mark they voted, but the choices were limited. Myanmar's military junta, who took power in a coup nearly 5 years ago, have approved only pro-military candidates, with the Union Solidarity and Development Party, a military proxy, expected to emerge as the largest bloc. Unsurprisingly, the head of the junta saw no issues with the elections. "We guarantee that this will be a free and fair election," he said. The United Nations strongly disagrees, saying the election has been conducted in an environment of violence and repression.
Elections under current circumstances risk provoking further violence and make a long-term solution more elusive.
The junta has repeatedly carried out airstrikes to win back lost ground from opposition groups, including killing 30 when this hospital was bombed. Areas not controlled by the junta are not able to vote. Opposition parties were banned from participating, including the National League for Democracy, former leader Aung San Suu Kyi's party. Her son worries she could be dead after being detained by the military in 2021.
The upcoming elections that the military are trying to stage, which we all know are completely unfair and so far from being free that it would be laughable if it wasn't so lamentable.
There are no Western observers of the election. Instead, China, Russia, India, and Vietnam are overseeing the vote. Any criticism could lead to jail time, with one man receiving 7 years hard labor for a critical Facebook post. There'll be 2 other rounds of voting in January in a process Western observers call a sham. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
And another year of money management coming up. What to do with finances are a big focus of your New Year's resolutions. There are just a few days left in 2025, and many are thinking about what to change next year. So most New Year's resolutions are related to one of two things: health or money. And if your goals include improving your finances, I spoke to a few experts about certain things that you can do to stay on track.
New year, new resolutions, same old financial reality.
You've got inflation, you've got economic uncertainty. There are a lot of things out there that will explain why you feel stressed. But January 1st is a great time for a reset.
If you're looking to get a better handle on your finances, start by taking stock of 2025. Get clear on how much you made, saved, invested, and owe in debt. Then identify your targets.
Goals like saving for a 3-month emergency fund, or saving for a vacation that they want to take, or maybe there's some credit card debt that keeps them up at night.
When it comes to debt repayment priorities, aim to eliminate a creditor for a quick psychological boost using the snowball method,
where we tackle your lowest balance debt first to clear that off and kind of get that motivational win under our belt before we start tackling the remaining.
Personal finance expert Melissa Leong has a different approach. Instead of drafting up rigid rules, she suggests figuring out your money values.
Instead of trying to write down a rule, instead of saying, I resolve to be more careful with my impulse shopping, write a value or an identity that you want to embody. Like, I am a conscious spender. I always pause for 24 hours before a non-essential or unexpected purchases over X amount.
If motivation and staying on track are tricky, she recommends automating to bypass willpower.
So automate transfers after payday, maybe to your emergency fund, retirement fund for debt repayment.
And give yourself grace if you slip up.
We're not trying to win the Super Bowl. We're trying to practice every week.
Aim for consistency, not perfection.
Let's just hope for the best and behave and believe in our own capacity for money empowerment in 2026.
Just ahead, our political panel in Ottawa recaps an unprecedented year in federal politics. 2025 was an incredible year in federal politics. What began with the resignation of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives looked certain to form government is now ending with Prime Minister Mark Carney having turned the Liberal Party's fortunes around. Now, to wrap it all up, our chief political correspondent David Akin joins us now, along with the rest of our Ottawa reporters. David?
Well, thank you. 2025 was a momentous year in Canadian politics, and here to look at the year that was and ahead at the year that's coming, my colleagues here in Global's Parliamentary Bureau, Mackenzie Gray, Jillian Piper. Guys, great to chat. I think we'd all agree that election back in the spring was the #1 political story of the year. Mac, let's start with you. You spent a lot of time out on the campaign trail with the Liberals and Mark Carney. What stood out for you?
Yeah, I was out with the Liberals for 3 weeks, and Mr. Carney was able to effectively make sure that the issue for the election for Liberal voters and a lot of left-leaning voters who maybe left the New Democrats was who was best placed to deal with Donald Trump. And that shows that luck and timing have a lot to do in life and in politics. Mr. Carney was able to convince Canadians that those were the issues that they needed to vote on.
The Liberals had a resurrection, a complete resurrection, and the other end of the scale was the NDP, Jillian, who just decimated. And you were out with that particular tour for a couple of weeks. What struck you about Jagmeet Singh's last hurrah?
Yeah, on week one, we heard Mr. Singh talking a lot about, I'm going to be the next prime minister, here's why I'm running. And by the last week of that campaign, we were no longer hearing about him running to be a prime minister. All of a sudden, the messaging had totally changed to, we need to send more New Democrats to Ottawa.
Common denominator between the NDP and the Conservatives in that campaign, leaders losing their seats. Jagmeet Singh lost his seat. Pierre Poilievre in the Ottawa riding, which happens to be my riding too, voters said we don't want Poilievre back. And the voters that he failed to win are the people who used to vote Conservatives, boomers, people my age and older. They said, no, we'll go with Carney because Carney's the guy to deal with Trump. Younger people, particularly younger men, went with Conservatives. That gives them a good base that I think they're holding on to, but they need to win boomers.
Yeah, and Mr. Poilievre needs to find a more cogent message heading into the next election.
Okay, listen, Max, secondary story for the year. Lots of other things going on.
Well, we talked about the election and how it was going to be focusing on Donald Trump. What did Mark Carney say? He was going to be elbows up. Of course, he danced with his elbows up on election night, but basically right after that, he totally changed. He dropped the counter tariffs that he said was going to bring in $20 billion for his budget. He said he was going to be tough in dealing with Donald Trump. Well, that really changed. It's clear that they have a good relationship, but the political problem for Mr. Carney is tariffs actually haven't gone down. They've gone up a lot since the election. He's going to have to deal with that in the new year, or I think that could be a major political risk for him.
Yeah, that was a theme all through the year. How about you, Jillian? What did you see as another big story?
Yeah, certainly there's been a lot of focus internationally for Mr. Carney. You know, we're talking about the Trump threat, we're talking about diversifying our trade partners with, you know, maybe China or India, but really domestically, I've found that they are not using the same messaging or the same frequency of messaging as they were during the campaign. You know, we heard a lot about crime, housing, affordability. You know, that was really the bread and butter of that campaign, it felt like. And then also when he became prime minister, it just felt like those things kind of went to the wayside a little bit. We haven't seen a lot of affordability measures that might make it easier for someone to put food on the table or to buy a house.
And that certainly is the wedge that Pierre Poilievre is going to try to exploit in the year ahead. And he did fairly well in the last year. For me, the secondary story that came late in the year, the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU between Canada and Alberta, because this idea that there's a possibility, it's still a possibility, of building an oil pipeline from Alberta to northern BC raises all sorts of issues. First and foremost, I think reconciliation, rights of Indigenous peoples who want economic development against those who don't want that kind of economic development. Climate change. What is this Liberal government? Are they committed to climate action? We lost Stephen Guilbeault, left cabinet, because he said to heck with this idea of a pipeline. Okay, we're going to cast our minds ahead to 2026. Mackenzie, I'll start with you. You're looking ahead to the new year. What are you going to keep an eye on?
Well, we're going to be spending a lot of time focusing on what happens between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, because we're going to be renegotiating the free trade deal this year. And all the eggs politically are really in that basket for Mark Carney. He said he was going to be elbows up. He said he was the best person who can get a deal with Donald Trump. And he says we have the best deal right now because between about 85 and 90% of our goods go to the U.S. tariff-free. If that changes, that is a fundamental shift for the Canadian economy, a fundamental political shift. And Mr. Carney was elected on basically making sure that that doesn't happen. He needs to ensure that that free trade access continues.
All right, Jillian, what about you? What are you looking for in 2026?
I think I'm looking to one of the big campaign promises of Mr. Carney was that he was going to build at speeds never seen before. Yeah. You know, we talked a lot about these major projects. We've seen two sort of tranches of the announcements that they've done, about 12 projects. And it'll be really interesting to see which other projects are greenlit.
And how does he build, baby, build, right? That's what he said he was going to do. Have you had any shovels yet? No.
If he wants to win the election, he needs to be at some ribbon-cutting ceremonies. And some of the things that they've talked about at those major projects, that's pretty far away to actually getting done.
For me, I want to, here's an issue I think didn't get a lot of attention or enough attention last year, but I know I'm going to be paying attention to this, and that's national unity. Again, you know, national unity, when I was in, 12 or 14 years old, René Lévesque, we thought the country was going to fall apart. 1976 referendum. We may have some more referendums soon. In Alberta first, and Alberta is on a path to have a referendum should Alberta leave the Confederation in 2026. I don't think Albertans are going to vote in favor. I don't think it'll be close. I think they'll vote to stay in Canada. But referendums can be divisive, polarizing. They can cause problems outside your border. So that's one. And then in Quebec, the premier there, François Legault, he's on his last legs. The polls have been just terrible for him for months. And it's probably going to be the Parti Québécois that wins in the fall in election there. And their leader has said, we're going right back to referendum. Quick question to each of you, minute left. Do you think we'll have a election, federal election in 2026? Jillian, what do you think? You want to take a gamble there?
I know there are some staffers who are wishing that we don't. I hope their wish comes true, so I'll say no.
Okay.
I think Mr. Carney will get the floor crossers required to get the majority, but there's going to be a lot of by-elections with a number of Liberals quitting this year and potentially other Conservatives too that could change the math in Parliament, so we'll have to watch those closely.
Yeah, I know the Conservatives want an election because they think they can close that gap.
They could have had one if they wanted one this year. They didn't take it.
They didn't take it. So I'm with you. I think that the floor crossers are going to come. We're not going to have an election this year, but if they don't come, I think that maybe Mark Carney says, I'll gamble, and in the fall,
he'll pull the
plug, and away we go.
He'll need a mandate to renegotiate the free trade deal.
All right. Okay. Well, looking forward to seeing what unfolds in 2026. I hope you are too. Jillian Piper, Mackenzie Gray, thanks so much. Back to you.
Thanks, David. Next, why this outdoor hockey game in Winnipeg is a Californian dream come true. Winnipeg is a hockey town, and even in a deep freeze, you'll find diehards at the outdoor rinks. Well, a Los Angeles man who's only ever played indoors wanted in on the action. So, as Melissa Ridgen reports, he put out the call for a game of shinny over the holidays, and Winnipeggers responded.
James Pike has been playing hockey since he was a little kid, but as a Californian, never on an outdoor rink.
Do you know the term ODI? Yes, I learned it recently.
Ahead of a holiday trip to Winnipeg, he put out a call on a community page.
I'm a hockey player from LA visiting Winnipeg for Christmas. I've never really played pickup hockey outside, and it's always been a dream of mine. If anybody knows a good place to play, pickup, let me know.
A rally cry heard around Winnipeg.
It was overwhelming. Like, everybody was kind of like helping out with gear, telling me where to go, where to play, and the people were just so like wonderful and like supporting.
Casey Abraham hasn't suited up in years, but couldn't resist.
Immediately, I was like, I need to get some goalie equipment. Thankfully, somebody came through on the internet as well and lent me these.
A wind chill of -25, stopping no one.
If we're on offense and we're trying to shoot the goalie, and then they get the puck, they got to take it to the red line all the way out and then go back in.
With the teams picked, the action begins.
All right, let's go have some fun. Go to the net, Leo.
Pike's wife Jane grew up here, and his daughter Leo fits right in with the local rink rats. In all, a California dream come true in Manitoba. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Ann Gaviola. Tonight's Your Canada is Delta BC. We love seeing your Canada. Keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a safe and wonderful night.